Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Corey. Thanks for taking the time to talk today. Um, I
Thanks for
think,
having me.
yeah. So a little bit about this channel. This is episode number 3 now, and what I want to do is kind of explore this human potential that we have in our bodies and our connection to the phenomenal world. And I think you have such a great story, such a unique perspective on kind of engaging with our own bodies with this internal process, this term that I've gotten from you. um, and I really love that. And I think it would help people to kind of understand where you came from with all of this, because you spent about 10 years, right, living in Japan, training in the Rinzai Zen tradition, which, if people don't know, in within the Zen kind of world, Rinzai is a very martial, very kind of Spartan way of training Zen, right? And there's actually a really cool documentary, and I'll link that in the notes on this that I put on YouTube. There's a cool documentary of the time when Corey was training under this teacher, Shodo Harada Roshi, in Sogenji in Japan. And it has Corey's ordination. And I remember watching it and being very inspired because I saw it and I was like, man, these guys they're living in a different world than I'm living in. You see the meeting of the teacher and the students, and they're kind of you don't know what they're doing, but they're essentially yelling at each other, right? And I'll let Corey maybe kind of explain what that is. But you just feel like there's some Jedi training going on that is very different from what a lot of people
Right,
see in other types of contemplative training, right? A lot of energy.
right.
And so I just became very fascinated with your story, with the Rinzai tradition. And then I started to learn more about kind of where that journey took you, learning about Qigong, and kind of that whole world. And now you're doing, structural integration and a lot of different healing modalities, right, that you've been able to develop from this training that you got with the Roshi. So that's a little bit of the background that I know from Corey, and I'll let him correct me for anything that I might have gotten wrong there. But yeah, if you could just start off by telling us a little bit about your time in Japan, like what you got, the training that you got from the Roshi, and how that's changed your life now.
Right. Well, I think some people maybe listening to this maybe are um, into sports and into training and in certain different types of training. And I think for me, I was a big athlete as a kid. I Going back, I was sort of a really sensitive kid. I grew up in the woods, and I remember I didn't have any neighbors for about half mile, something like that, and so I was out in the woods there and very quiet, and I think I just had certain psychic kind of things happen for me as a small person, and I feel like I kind of could see through the veil in a certain way. But I really didn't know how to interact with that. And then I feel like I didn't see that possibility around me in people. I didn't feel like um, that was okay to be that sensitive and to be open to reality. And I didn't really have a big religious background. I think I craved that. I would have gone for whatever. I did crave that, and then I grew up in the Midwest, and sports are a big deal there. You play your baseball. You spend the summers at the baseball field. We play basketball. That's all we do. Is we're out there playing basketball, um, and I was also really fascinated with like martial arts and with ninja and and in these kung fu movies, And so what I was really, inspired by was this ability to take the person and have them train in such a way that they could um, interact with reality at a heightened level, a level that most
Mhm.
people can't. You see that in these movies, and I mean, obviously some of them are exaggerated, but part of me knew that part of it wasn't exaggerated. Some of this was very real, and of course, you have Star Wars and stuff like that. But I think the thing that hooks us about those is that you see that there's a truth to what they're talking about, and you can feel that kind of clear nectar through some of the other stuff that's there. And um, and so with sports, I think I started to see different possibilities of dropping into interacting with reality in a deeper way. And so the sports were a medium to explore how to um, take your body and use it to go into a place like the zone, and then everything slows down, and you find a different type of freedom in that. And um and that's very strange, and it's very exciting. And so I think for a lot of us, sports were kind of this little battleground to explore that. It was our thing that was available to do that in. And so I think certain people, they're going to find a way to interact and to explore that stuff, and the one that was there was sports for me. Um, and um, and so I had certain body problems come up when I was in college. I was a big rock climber. I was a big, athlete in many ways, but I kind of, at a certain point, my whole body kind of locked up. And I think there were many factors to that, but I think in some ways it was a kind of spiritual, um, pressure cooker, which came to a head, and I had to then work with it. And I feel like, I would say that I was this sort of pressure cooker of intensity, and this intensity I didn't really know what to do with. Um, and I felt like there was a part of me going forward, and there was a part of me going back, and there was sort of chaos in my internal world. I could drop into things in sports and when everything would unify, but most of the time walking around, I didn't have that ability to find this oneness in my way of
Right.
being. Um, and somehow I was very attracted to the beats and to um, Zen in a certain way, Buddhism. I went to a couple talks by Tibetan Buddhists, and I did some practices which I think started to open me up. And then somehow I got out to Whidbey Island, where Gary Snyder sent me out to Whidbey Island, and I first encountered Zen. Um, and I've talked about this before, but it was very abrupt and very shocking to me. It wasn't what I expected, and yet it was very powerful. It was very intense. It was very kind of, there was this sharpness to it, and there was this directness to it, and it wasn't nice. And yet I found myself very seen and very held and very. I felt alive in a way which I wasn't really ready for, and I just got the heck out of there. And I went traveling, and I when I was traveling, I saw that I couldn't really be in my body. I couldn't really be happy while traveling. So I saw that wasn't the path for me. The path for me was to find a way to unify my internal world. I went back, and I met the Roshi, and seeing the Roshi was such a different experience. He was he was so profoundly different. And um, let's see, I want to get to where I went to Sogenji. So let me just pop to Sogenji. So I met the Roshi. I've told that story before. Got to
Mm.
Sogenji, and that was right after kind of 9/11. And so all of my intensity I could see in the Roshi. I could see that he had used all of the intensity, all of this energy, and he had used it to drive into this place of basically being in samadhi, functioning in the zone in samadhi. That was my language to be able to understand the Roshi. So it wasn't like Michael Jordan dropping into the zone for game whatever. It was that he kind of lived that way. There was a unification of his mind and body, and even more so this energy, which was transformative to himself and everything around him. So, um, so yeah, that was what was very compelling about it. It was a training ground to work on bringing all that confusion, that chaos into oneness, and be able to function from that place. So, and that I think is very unique to actually see that. There's so much talk about the zone, there's so much talk about samadhi, but to really see someone like that and to really be able to train in that way was very profound for me, very life saving. Yeah, yeah,
And so can you talk a little bit about like what some of that training looked like?
yeah,
The interactions with the Roshi.
yes, yes. Um,
Maybe an example of one.
well, just being around the Roshi, like him just coming, we're all sitting at the table, him just coming, walking in the room, him just walking in the room and sitting down was transformative. It was like, so the Roshi's, his focus is so powerful that when he's moving, um, that movement creates like a wave of energy which transforms people around him. And so just being around him was transformative. You would go into a state of openness, just hanging around him. This is called ba in Japanese. But so the life there is that you're working, okay? You're like, raking. At first you're raking and you're sweeping and you're not in your body, and then you slowly learn how to rake in your body, and you're mopping the floor, and which means you're sort of running behind it on the floor. And then you're going to see him a couple of times a day for what's called dokusan or sanzen. And in that sanzen, you meet him, and you go in, and at first you'd show him your breath, and the breath training is what it's about. And this is very long outward extended breath. So this is called susokan, and you breathe out as far as you can. And in that breathing out, your whole being, through the training, your whole being starts to unify with that in focus. So the breath and the state of mind unify in oneness through the breathing. This is what Susokan is really about. And so he's watching that, and he can see, oh, there's a gap there. You're not really doing it, or your focus is scattered, or you're chasing shadows, in your awareness. And so he can see that, and he kind of outdraws you. You go in and I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna show him, and he sidesteps you, and he outdraws you, and 1,000 times, and he tells you, don't use your brain. Don't use your brain. It's not here. It's not here. And so you're there, going to see him over and over, trying to show him, trying to get it. And through that, it's like a blacksmith molding you to unify with this great life energy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're learning to cook. You're sitting in the zendo like 5 to about 18 hours a day. In the long retreats, you're sitting a lot. It's very kind of aggressive in some ways. The environment, it's very physical. You're like, the bell rings and your mouth waters. You're very in your body. It's not a cerebral kind of training. So you become more and more simple, and that's kind of the deal. Yeah, yeah,
And you're not even sleeping a lot while you're there either, right? It's very
yeah.
and and let me ask you, is the training kind of trying to bring you into a state where you're using up so little unneeded energy that amount of sleep is all you need, because you're spending a lot of time sitting and you should be deeply resting in that state.
right. I think the Roshi one time said it's about half. So sitting zazen is about half as restive as sleeping. Yeah, but other than
Interesting.
that, yeah, but other than that, you are. What happens is you're profoundly exhausted. You're profoundly exhausted, and in that, you have to begin to connect to a different type of vitality, a different type of vitality. And this is the main aspect of the training is the Tanden or lower Dantian in Chinese. Okay, and this is like the day one. You see the Roshi, and he hits his belly and grunts at you. Ooh, ooh, this is the deal. He's there, and he's not telling you think about oneness. He's hitting his belly, and so the whole practice is about beginning to go into this tanden and function from the tanden as a unifying aspect for your body mind. Yeah. So what happens is over time, the training, because it exhausts you in a certain way, you have to, in order to function there, you have to begin to tap into this other aspect of energy, and then that becomes your main way of interacting with life is through this other way of interacting with this great life energy. And so honestly, at the monastery, you're both, super tired, and you hate it, and it's profound and it's beautiful, and you're being, the egg is cracking, the shell is cracking over and over, and that's not always easy. It's actually uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable environment of blossoming, like the lotus leaf growing up out of the mud. It's hard, but it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
On another one of your podcasts, I believe you were, I forget which one it was, but you were interviewing one of your students, and she was recounting a story about, I think you guys were going up, or she was going up to the top of the hill or something, maybe to the cemetery late at night. And some of the students were like, no, I need to get my sleep, and she was like, well, then you haven't understood the Tanden yet.
yeah, yes,
Right.
right,
And so that really, I think learning how to tap into this deep reserve that we all have is
yes,
really powerful.
yes. It's very, very contrary to how we most of us function, and I think the life there is very rebellious. It's very kind of there are a bunch of kind of maverick people there, and you think, oh, you'd go there and everyone would be kind of gentle and sweet, and it's really not like that at all. It's like you have these people who are these kind of loaded sticks of dynamite. They're there, and they're wild animals, and you see, like, the most wild people I have ever met have been in this environment where we're all there following this crazy schedule, and yet in the midst of that, they're wide open. And seeing the Roshi um, he is completely wide open. Most of us, I think, we're functioning pretty safe. We're pretty careful with what we're doing, and um, the Roshi is like he's giving 1,000% to what he's doing and to everyone around him, and that's very strange. It's very strange to be around, and it's more than most of us can take. Like I think you were telling me about, you're sitting there, and they're chanting, and you think, I can't handle this. I got to get out of here. And it's like that. It's like this wide open intensity. And this is in Japanese, there's this aspect of this word shikari, which means to grasp with all of your might. And so you have this aspect where you're throwing everything you have into this action or this sitting, and yet you're also letting go completely. And this is very strange for us. Most of us at first, some of us are really good at one and we're not good at the other. Like for me, I think I was really good being really intense and throwing myself into things, but I didn't know how to let go for a long time. And but seeing that intensity, the wildness of the people there is, not, I think, not what people would expect. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a good transition, because what I'd like people to get out of this is not everyone has a life, the opportunity, or necessarily even wants to go
Right.
live in this pressure cooker
Right.
under
Right.
somebody like the Roshi
Right.
sleeping a few hours a night. So how can people engage with this themselves? How can they learn to relate to the world in a place where they are completely raw and open, like you said?
Mhm.
Um, and that, what that kind of is what I'm transitioning to a little bit here is your training in Qigong and some of the stuff that you're leading now.
Yeah.
This embodiment training, and it's some things that you've learned, I think, while you were at Sogenji, but it wasn't necessarily the core training, but you found it to be very beneficial. So tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
Um, I think this is really interesting. So, like, the life in the monastery, it's a kind of yogic training. So
And what do you mean by yogic
yogic
for
meaning,
people? Yeah.
that it's a physical, alchemy training.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the training is like a physical medium to explore how to interact with this great life energy. Okay. And so if we think about that, that's not exactly, um, technically kind of Buddhist. It's not like you're there
Not in the
worshiping,
head.
right? Not in the head, and not necessarily, dogmatic, or, it's not really about, you know worshiping the Buddha, or Dogen or Hakuin. It's really that you're finding and a lot of us went there. We went there because, we weren't going to become, you know really good Buddhists. And I think, in the end, I kind of fell in love with it. But you're
Yeah.
there to explore that. And so you can do that in other ways. It doesn't have to be that you're there, wearing these clothes. And, I think there are benefits to that training. But, so the for me, honestly, in order to get into my sitting, I had to do the standing work. That was what really, helped me to get into my sitting. So, in that, I also saw that, it wasn't so much about, a holy aspect of zazen as it was, this is a posture which I can use to begin to energetically, um, meld into what is life. What is this great life energy? And so the standing for me, I did a couple different types, and one of them is, this Jamjong, which I'm teaching in these days. And I also did this non-directed, and they were kind of, polar opposites in a certain way. The Jamjong is, it's static kind of pole standing, could be called Negong. Um,
Mhm.
and you hold your body in these postures, and, you start off at a short time, and they're difficult postures. So they're not like insanely difficult, but you hold your arms up, and often, in order to do that, you've got to deeply relax. Okay. And, most of us, we can kind of do it for a couple minutes, and then it starts to be like, well, this is really hard. And then your stuck places in your body start to show up. And, I found that for me, doing this standing, it started to get what I call this sort of internal process. It got that, it got me more familiar with the internal language it took to interact with these stuck places in my body. I think the body is like this kinked hose. Okay. And so what we're doing with this standing, and then also zazen, is we're unkinking this hose for this great life energy to shine through. Okay.
Mhm.
And so the medium that I found very helpful was this Jamjong. Was, so I'd stand there, and I would see, oh, I'm this occult place in my system that I can never really touch, I started to be able to interact with it. Say that's your mid back. Say that's your probably mid back, honestly, but also the neck. Maybe there's a place in your body that you don't even know is tight. And you stand there, and as you do that, things start to open in this new way, like an unfurl starts to happen, or this eddy of movement starts to happen from the inside out. And when that happens, the body starts to fill up in a new way, a different way, a new type of vitality starts to shine through the body. And for me, that was very transformative. It gave me both an internal language to deal with these stuck places and also a type of momentum through the system, which would fill up the body. And then it would also work on these stuck places by helping to open them. Okay.
And
Makes sense?
yeah, it makes sense. And just so everybody Corey's talking with his hands, and he's kind of got his hands up like he's hugging a tree. And
Yeah.
that's one of the main poses. It's you're kind of squatting down very slightly and have your arms kind of out in front of your chest like you're holding a tree.
Yes.
And after for a few minutes, it seems like this is no big deal. And then all of a sudden, some tension starts to build in the body. And in your mind, you're going, okay, I don't think I can do this much longer, but you've still got another 10 minutes to go.
Right.
And you're already trembling in new places that you didn't know you had muscles.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so what happens for me when I do this practice is I can really feel that tension start to build up, and there's no choice to power through it. Powering through it
Yes.
makes it even worse.
Yes.
And so you have to find a way to relax into it even more. And I think that's kind of the beginning, maybe, about what you're talking about
Yes.
at minimum, really deeply relaxing the body so that we can unkink these hoses and let that energy hold us up naturally,
Yes.
without, because it's amazing. The other day I was doing the standing practice with Corey,
Yeah.
and I kind of inside in my mind, I was screaming at this tension in my body, wanting it to go away.
Yes.
In my mind, I'm yelling at it and almost gritting my teeth, because the frustration is just in me so much that because I want to hold this. I have a very kind of military approach to doing things, right? I can muscle through everything. And then a few seconds later, Corey talks about, tell us about the yelling at the flowers to grow quote. That's what you
Yeah.
said, like,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah,
You can't yell at the flowers to make them bloom,
right. And I started cracking up in my head when you said that, because it was exactly what I was doing,
Yeah.
and I had to just let go.
Interacting with, and it shows us how we deal with everything. Honestly, for me, it shows me how I deal with everything. If I
Mhm.
encounter something in my life, um, do I barge through it? Do I, stand on top of it and want it to change? It shows me how I can't really feel my emotions or anything I'm afraid of. Um, there I am, freezing up in fear. And so, part of what this stuff does is it gives us an opportunity, a measuring stick, to be able to start to engage with these places. And I call them kind of stuck places, but that could just as easily be a relationship. So, there's that stuck place, um, and here we are. Like if it's a door, we're forcing that door. We want to force that door open, and maybe it's a pull door. Maybe it's a door that we need to, and so we learn how to meet reality, meet what's there, and then when we meet it, it moves, it softens, and then reality becomes more permeable. It becomes something we can interact with rather than something we're pushing against. So this softness creates a whole different way of interacting with what we're doing. If we want to take it that far, life can be more something that's lifting us up rather than something we're having to manipulate and control.
And that brings me to another topic that I love kind of hearing you talk about, and it's how we relate to others now. Like I think that in most of our interactions with other human beings, whether we realize it or not, we're always kind of, well, we're protecting ourselves. We're slightly trying to manipulate the situation in some way, or we're trying to show ourselves as a certain way to other people, the way we want them to see us, instead of just showing up in a really authentic and genuine and wide open way.
Yes.
And I think that people can really feel like the Roshi is somebody who's just wide open like that. And it, I think that that's something that everybody can immediately benefit from, right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk about how that's helped you in relating with others and how you can feel that when you're kind of, maybe with your wife or just strangers, and how that's changed your life.
Yeah. And so I think it's all a similar language to me. There's
Hmm.
there's and I think in a way all we are is relating. All we are is interacting. You know, this energy field that is supposedly Corey here is just relating with other energies in this room. And so where that barrier is that I think I am is actually a fiction that I've somehow create, you know. And so how can I and what I saw with the Roshi and Sanzen was I saw what it was to really relate with another person, and not in a sexual way, but I saw what real intimacy is, and that is you can meet someone, um, and you can meet them energetically in such a powerful, subtle way, like two soups meeting in midair. You can meet that. And what I saw was that if I could become that, if I could meet the Roshi, he would be there. And I would come in with my agenda. And if I came with that agenda and I met him, he would just ring me out, get out of here, you know. And so my job was to begin to meet him and meet that same texture he was bringing of his awareness. And so it's very strange, but that's the real training of Sanzen is you begin to learn how to meet people, meet their state of mind and become that. And so, like walking around, how can I meet the environment as I'm walking home today here from my office? How can I meet the environment? And where I am barging through the environment or where my awareness is hard or aggressive, and then I come upon something that isn't going to take that, I have to soften. I have to meet that. I have to meld with what's happening and with people. Um, and it's just a big playground that you can explore. And it really is something you can feel. You can learn to live in a more sensory relating way to interacting with people, etc. So, you know, like if I'm with my wife, you know, how can I allow that edge of my awareness to soften with her? And then she feels heard, she feels seen, she feels almost embraced by that. The Roshi is this just this amazing example of someone who can, you're just in the room with them and you feel buoyed up, you're lifted up just from being with that person. And that's that a high level of relating, is that they're taking this and they're holding you in this embrace, and we can all do that. And so that's what I would like to offer to people as a possibility.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, I guess the last topic that I would like to touch on is the way I divide your training now. Kind of what you teach is this very structured, these poses, these jamjong poses, and they're kind of, they're different forms, they're different positions that you hold, and there is definitely a fixed position that you need to be in, right? Some structure. But then you have your unstructured standing,
Yeah.
where you'll just
Yeah.
stand, quite literally. And that sounds really simple, but it's actually it's completely letting go of anything, any idea that you have about what even just standing is, right? And letting the body kind of just do what it needs to do. So maybe talk about the unstructured part of your training, and it reminds me of something that I think you once asked the Roshi, what do you want from me? And he says, I just want you to live in or just be in your body, right? Because the body already knows how to birth true wisdom.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
talk about that, like
Right.
the wisdom that's already just in the body if we get out of its way, and how to get out of its way. We don't know how to.
We don't know how to. Um, yeah. When I was back in college in Missoula, Montana, that's where I went to school. I kind of seized up and I went to this thing one evening, and it was just this evening of non-directed body movement. And my good friend Marilyn Beach was there, and she led it. And the idea is you just stand there and don't do anything, don't create anything, and it's crazy, you know. So
Right.
you
It's
stand there,
crazy.
it's crazy, you know.
Yeah.
It's so contrary to what we do. We have this fix-it mind, this manipulative mind, this hyper-vigilant mind trying to at all times control or take care of what's going on in it with good intentions, you know. um, so so the idea there is like, you stand there and you may end up on the floor, and the rule is to let go of this editor of the, well, I'm supposed to be having good posture, my body's supposed to be aligned and beautiful and perfect here. And if it does something different, then that must mean I'm pretty screwed up, you know? And so letting go of that editor, and if the body starts to move, okay, I recommend doing this for, if you can, a little while, like 20 minutes to start, something like that. I like to do it for an hour, because after 45 minutes, the cup overflows and things happen in a new way. But the idea is you stand there, and if your body starts to do something a little bit weird, even your arm starts to move a little bit, it starts to kind of make a little wave, or your hand starts to come up in a circle in some weird way. Um, don't let that editor come in and stop that. So let go of that editor. This is a blank canvas, and let's hang out on this blank canvas and let the system. We've given our input. Now let's see what the output is of the system. And so I did that. And the first evening I did that there in Missoula, it was, I think I like remembered my birth or something crazy. You know what I mean? The cord was around my neck, and I was standing there, and my neck was all kinked in this really uncomfortable way for, 20 minutes. And then I came out of it, and I felt freer. I felt different. And obviously I wasn't out of it. I wasn't done, but I had connected with something, and it was strange and a little scary and powerful. And then I remembered I went, like, I think it was a month later or something. I went to see a Tibetan teacher, and I was sitting there in the audience, and my neck started to unwind again. And I saw, like, I don't want to do this. I just want to sit here. I don't want to draw attention to myself. And yet I felt this energy kind of taking over in my system. And I saw, oh, this is all trying to happen here. Um, and so I took that to Japan. And so there was the very structured day, lots of zazen, lots of work, carrying logs down the mountain for the fire, and then I'd have my jamjong, which I would do before. There was like a little short thing where you could grab a rice ball if you needed to for supper at like 4:30 or something like that. And so I would go and do jamjong before that. But after lunch, I would kind of run back, like sit against the wall and try to sleep for a few minutes. And then I would go out in the garden and I would try to stand, if possible, for an hour in this non-directed. And and for me, the environment of the monastery is so structured and so intense, and someone's always watching you, that for me to have some unstructured time to feel my body and feel reality and kind of, I think there's a lot of artist in me. I needed some unstructured time to discover what was left, what's real. And in doing that, over time, I started to get a sense that this deep level of zazen was there all the time. This energetic momentum was always there, always moving through me. Through the non-directed, I could let go of all of my ideas of how it should be, and 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 then I saw it's there. It's unstoppable. It's never going away. It's not about good ideas or bad ideas. There's this vitality that's always there, guiding me to open up to it. And I needed an amoral kind of time to be able to feel this innate aspect. Because if it was just going to be, Corey's so great and he's working so hard, therefore he's such a good Buddhist that this energy happens, that wouldn't have been enough for me. I needed to find something that was not about me being good or talented or brilliant. It was something that was there always. And so then over time, my zazen, my damjong, and the non-directed, they all became the same thing. They're all a language. They're all different modalities to interact with this innate energetic aspect that is always there. And so letting go of those ideas again showed me there's a much more connected aspect to reality than I had previously been aware of. So the non-directed seriously deepened my process and my training. I would say it was as powerful as any other aspect in the monastery to going deep in the training.
Right, right. Wow. I think for a lot of people, they hear your story. They hear stories like this, kind of what you were talking about when you were a kid. You're watching the martial arts videos,
Yeah, right.
and they're they seem to be operating in a reality that's so much different than yours, that people think that it's too far. It's not
Yeah.
possible, right? But but I think giving people permission to know that it's right there.
Yes.
It's not something far off that you have to go live in a cave in
Yes.
the Himalayan mountains for 20 years to discover, right? It's what's
Yes.
already there. So maybe some
Yes.
closing thoughts on that for,
Yeah. So I think the body practices are very powerful for this. Okay. Um, like, doing these body practices, I love the Jamjong. I love the non-directed. I love the body practices. I think are a very clear, simple way to begin to open up to this stuff. And I think that's what a lot of us came out of the monastery and we got into body practices, because it's a medium which we all have. We all
Mhm.
are stuck. We're all we have problems in our bodies, and they're always a way to be able to engage right now with what's happening. And so I always tell people, I always suggest to people that a body practice is really essential for this stuff. People have lots of ideas. People even have enlightenment experiences, and yet they're not really offering anything of real power to anyone. And the body practices really are a very rubber hits the road way to interact with this stuff. Maybe that's a whatever it is for you. If it's BJJ, or if it's some kind of martial arts, Aikido, or something like that. I like the ones that are a whole body aspects. If it's dance, if it's whatever it is, if it's rock climbing for me was a beautiful way to um, test how I was open or not open, or focused or not focused. And I think if you get a taste of this stuff, you kind of fall in love with it, and then your practices become ways to touch that and interact with it. And I do think some kind of time when you can touch that is good. And then maybe that's retreats or something like that. Maybe to go on a retreat and maybe touch this great life energy in some way. And it may give you a bug that you can then chew on. You can work on this aspect in whatever creative way that you need to. Um, again, if you're a martial artist, using that as a medium to explore how to creatively explore reality. I love this, and this is what I don't think everyone needs to go to Japan, and it's a certain flavor. So yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that your story and all of this is just so inspiring. It's something that for whatever reason that has not kind of come to the West.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems like the language around how to explain it has not been well developed.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, understanding this internal language
Yes.
and how to dialogue with your
Yes.
own body and this energy. So thank you so much
Oh,
for being on, Corey, and talking about this stuff. I could, it's so interesting to me. I feel like we could just do this
yes.
every day and talk about it because it's endlessly fascinating.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's life. It's this life energy.
Right. Right.
Um, so so you have a podcast.
Yeah, I do.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
You
Right.
have a blog, a beautiful blog that talks. It's very motivating for a lot of practitioners. You
Yes.
talk about a lot of your time in the monastery, kind of your practice now, and some technical explanations here and there too, that are helpful for people. And then you also do a lot of body work, structural integration, people that maybe have physical problems or things like that. So where can people find you? Where can they find all this stuff or reach out to you if they have any other questions or want to follow up on your work?
Yeah. Well, I have my website, Corey Hess Body Therapy, and mostly these days I'm teaching. Most of these
Mm-hmm.
days I'm teaching these online classes, and I'm doing in like Zoom one-on-one chats with people and one-on-one, private jam jong sessions. And I really love, I love these, and I think they're very powerful and transformative. My blog it's zenembodiment.com is the blog, and a lot of my people are in the monastery now who read it on the free day, or stuff like that. And it's like, it's wild. Um, but yeah, I feel very blessed. Feel very blessed to, it's another conversation, but we can then offer ourselves in this creative way, and when we connect with this stuff, it gives us some gifts on how to offer ourselves, how to transmit this, and that becomes a whole beautiful process, and not something I'm just eating at that feast now for 15 years. So it brings me real joy to be helpful in any way to people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I recommend anybody interested, check it out.
Yeah.
It's all the podcast, the blog, all of it's amazing. The classes are incredible. So thank you, Corey.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye, everyone.